Hi all, welcome to Beanie Composter. We're just approaching the end of June. It's nice and hot, and I would imagine at this time of the year your hotbin is doing fine outside. But what about when it comes to winter? Should you put your hotbin under cover? Well, in today's video you're going to find out if it's a good idea or not. So in today's video you're going to see us putting the hotbin. Bloody hell, the mouse is behind you!
Do it yourself.
Okay, they're gonna love that.
No!
So the Hotbin Mini has arrived at my mum's house and it's in a polytunnel at the moment. So we're Sunday today, but last Saturday I started it up. I didn't want to record all that because I just thought that would be a bit of a waste. We've got videos on that. But a week and a bit later we're back up to temperature, and when I started it up I used a lot of weeds out of my mum's garden, so it was quite damp and cold like a week ago. We've had real nice days during the day, but in the evenings has been quite cold. So I actually used a kickstart bottle using a milk carton just to sort of get some heat into those weeds because they'd been like outside. And I had a bit of time, I think Saturday, Sunday, Monday and Tuesday I kept feeding it because I wanted to get it up to the hatch door bit. And then from Wednesday I didn't really come over here, so it's been probably 4 days where I haven't given it a feed. But we'll have a look what's going on now. I can see from the top we're nice and hot, so let's have a look inside. So nice and hot. That's obviously going down quite quick now, but you can see the steam's coming out of it. I'm going to give it a quick feed now and a stir around. As I say, I put a milk bottle in here with some hot water just because I didn't have the kickstart bottle here. But the weeds were obviously quite cold because I dug them up from the garden. I just wanted to give it that head start so it was heating up quite quick because I'd put a lot of perennial weeds in, and I just wanted to make sure it got quite hot and we killed them off. So I'll give that a stir around. Mum's definitely got used to cutting stuff up, but when it comes to the shredded paper, well, that seems to be another story, but never mind. That is the Rolls Royce of cross-threaded paper now. Just a few chickens going in there as well. But all seems to be looking good, so that's great news. 1 week and we're nice and hot. It's all good news with the Hotbin Mini at the moment. Roughly about 3 weeks into the experiment, so it took me a week to get it hot, but since then we've remained nice and hot. I've noticed a few really good things about this experiment. Obviously not everyone's got a polytunnel or greenhouse where they can keep their hotbin. Obviously we haven't got that facility at home either, which is why we're doing it at someone else's house. But we've been running really hot, so 60 degrees most of the time. I'm only able to get here at the weekends, so I'm only giving it probably 2 feeds at the weekend, so that's a Friday night and normally a Sunday. And there was a time when I did check the temperature, it had gone down. It was still in the green, but it had gone down because I think the thing had just munched up all the stuff that I'd put in there, and we'd dropped below the hatch door bit, so I was still surprised we were in the green, but still doing really well. But the difference between this one and my one at home, where it's outside and I'm feeding that pretty much every other day, is this seems to be keeping hotter in here, and that's without feeding it every day. So if you have got an allotment where you can only get to it at the weekends in the winter time, this would be an ideal solution for you over the winter, I think. And we've had some frosty cold days. This week coming is supposed to be, you know, -3, -2, so it's definitely, you know, still cold, and we're just the beginning of March now. The main reason for me bringing it inside was not just for the frost. It was mainly, you know, if we had like heavy rain, stuff like that, I kind of thought that would make a big difference being in here. We've got a lot of condensation in here at the moment. I don't know if that's just, I don't think that's just from the Hotbin being in here. I just think that generally happens in here at the moment. Whereas with the larger one, over the winter time, I've been keeping stuff indoors. Here we're not. I'm keeping the bulking agent, the shredded paper, and literally just 10 minutes ago I've dug up a load of weeds in the garden here, so they're, you know, out in the cold. I'm not keeping it inside nice and toasty warm, and the bin is still working really well, so that's another plus, that you don't have to keep stuff inside. So let's look at the top. You know, you can see straight away that we're looking like we're quite hot inside. I've got the valve open the same amount as pretty much the same amount as the one at home.
Your gloves are embarrassing.
Wow, they're not mine. And inside, you can see there the dial showing almost 60 degrees. Lots of steam coming out. And it's probably not coming out on camera too well, but we are almost just below the hatch door there, so the hatch door, sort of where you want to be over, is there, and we're a little bit below that. And I am struggling only coming here like twice a week to keep on top of, because we are running so hot, it's hard to keep on top of feeding it. Ideally, I think if I could feed it every other day, that would be great. But even just, you know, a couple of times a week is really working out well. So my mum lives on her own, so she's not getting loads of food waste. And as a family, we're quite tight when it comes to, you know, we make sure we use everything anyway, but so there's not loads of food waste. My mum's able to get some bread that we've used in our hot bins, so we're using a bit of stale bread as well in here today, but mainly it's like lots of weeds that have come out of the garden, and that seems to be working well at the moment for us. So there's a few eggshells in there, but it is mainly, if you look inside, it's mainly sort of green weeds. I've got this lovely cross-shredded paper at the moment, which I don't want that going everywhere. Another great thing about doing this inside a tunnel is you don't get a massive gust of wind and all your paper flies around like confetti, so that's another bonus. But this is nice and sort of shredded up really well, so it really works well in the hot bin if you can get a shredder that is a cross shredder and, you know, makes it real small. I'm not measuring any of this, it's just, I'm just going by what I sort of my experience, but it's working well, so as they say, if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. And this is staying in here all the time. We're getting a lot of drips, condensation from the roof, but it's in a plastic bag and it seems to be fine. And the same with bulking agent, that just sits in here at the moment. And not too far from where my mum is, they chopped a load of lilando trees down, so we're just using some of that stuff as bulking agent at the moment. So that's all I'm doing, guys, and at the moment the Mini just seems to be happy as Larry. I'll show you, obviously we'll be going back to ours today, and I'll show you what's happening with the large Hotbin at ours, but as you've seen here, we're nice and hot and everything seems to be working really well. I'll show you the difference with ours at home that's outside. Another thing I haven't done is I haven't emptied the leachate yet, so let's have a look at that and see, you know, we're 3 weeks into making this compost, let's see if we have got any leachate. So not tons, but still some. And you've got to remember, it took a week to get this thing, you know, really up to temperature, so it's only been 2 weeks running at like 60 degrees plus, but yeah, not too bad. And another positive with keeping it in like a place like this is if you make a spillage, doesn't really matter. Back at HQ, although the temperature dial in the large one is a little bit longer, it is showing, you know, just borderline, we're on the, it's still in the green, which is good considering the temperature outside. Have a look, and this is the difference between keeping it inside and out. So I gave this a feed yesterday, we're still in the green just about, and I'm going to give it a feed now, but I'll give it a stir around and you can see still plenty of steam, so nice and hot still, but I'm still convinced that keeping it under the tunnel is much better in this time of the year. But as you can see, lots of steam, and we're about 4 or 5 degrees outside today, so still good news. I'll give it another feed. So this one's still doing quite well considering the temperature outside, but I think it's clear to see that keeping your Hotbin under cover does make a bit of a difference. But we carry on feeding both of them, and until we get round to actually emptying the Mini, then we'll sort of see what's happening. It's probably been a couple of weeks since we last done some filming on this experiment. The sun is shining today, which is brilliant, but in that time we've still had a few days where we've had some frost, not as hard as before, and we've also had quite a bit of rain on and off, so not ideal for outside. And in that time the big Hotbin starts sticking around the 40 degrees mark, and last weekend I took some compost out the bottom, and I did notice there were some sort of seeds that had started shooting, whether they were butternut squash, they look quite big, but yeah, I thought if I took some of the compost out the bottom we'd be getting up to hot composting temperatures again, but a couple of days later I was still sticking around the 40 degrees mark. So I'd done my usual, gave it a real good stir up from the bottom, and it has warmed up a tiny bit, but even so we've started to get really hot again. So I'll show you what's going on inside here. We're doing really well again, so have a quick look. So if we look at the dial, we're back up to 60, but like I say, there was a period where I was around the 40 degree mark, and it was struggling to sort of maintain that heat, but I've got it back up to 60 degrees again within like probably 2 or 3 days, so that's real good news. So what's been happening with the Hotbin Mini since we last filmed it? Well, I've been in here a few times and fed it, and it's absolutely steaming. Have a look where we're at on the dial on the top. It's the first time I think I've ever seen one of these Hotbins in the green on the actual top dial, so have a look. And we'll look inside as well. Lots of steam, and if we look at what the dial's at, we're just over the 60-degree mark. The weather has been cold, it's been raining, we've had a few frosts, but I really do think being in the polytunnel has helped this Hotbin stay really hot. There was one time that I came in here to give it a feed and it had gone cold, but I don't think that was any fault of the Hotbin. I just think it'd been so hot before that, and I'd left it I think about 5 days before I came to give it another feed, and literally all the stuff that was in there had composted down so much that I think all the heat had sort of disappeared from it. And I put a couple of large bones of turkey legs in there and some other waste, and within, you know, a day later it was rocking and rolling back up to temperature again, and I've managed to keep feeding it over that period every few days, and we are keeping, you know, 60 degrees and it's not dropping any lower than that. So I do think keeping it undercover is a really good help, especially, you know, during sort of winter, early spring, probably late autumn time. So the Hotbin Mini's now been in the polytunnel for almost 4 months now, and in that 4 months we've had all sorts of weather, but one thing about it is I've kind of not been able to come here all the time to regularly feed it. So there's been occasions where the Hotbin's gone cold, then it's got back hot again, and you know, it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride with it. And I can sort of understand now, when I'm not constantly on it, how people become quite frustrated with these Hotbins, where it can go cold. You know, there's been occasions where it's been quite wet inside, and if we have a look on the side, I'll show you there's like a gap that's built. I don't know if that's because I didn't put the cam strap on properly, but I'll show you and you'll see. So if you look here, we've got a bit of a gap going on between the actual Hotbin and the hatch door, and like I say, I thought I did that up really tight. I have tried to tighten it up a little bit more when I did notice that gap. I do think there's probably a bit of an ant's nest going on in here as well, but like I say, I don't know if this is a fault of the Hotbin, whether you need 2 cam straps on a Mini or not. If you've experienced this, let us know in the comments down below, because it would be interesting to know what your experience with one of these has been as well. With regards to leachade, I have been taking some out when I do come round here, so whether some evaporates because it's quite warm in here at the moment, I'm not too sure, but I haven't emptied it for probably a week, so let's see how much is in there now. So not a lot, and what I've noticed, the difference between this and the Hotbin at home, which is the Mark 1, the leachade at the moment on the Mark 1 has been coming out loads of it, where I've been putting quite a lot of wet stuff in there, but I've noticed with this one it comes out quite sludgy, and I'm not sure if that's a common thing with a Hotbin Mini as well. So if you do experience that one as well, let us know in the comments. It's time for a new experiment, so I want to completely empty the bin today and we'll see what the compost is like after 4 months of being in here. I'll show you what's going on in the top, and just so you can see before I empty it all. So although the top dial's in the green, I think that's just really because the actual outside temperature is so hot, and in this polytunnel as well. If we look inside, we're still in the green, and I haven't fed this for over a week, so that's quite good. I don't know if my mum's dating some French guy, because she hasn't said anything to me, but there's a load of snails in here, so I'm wondering if she's been dating a French guy and they're having snails every night for tea. But yeah, I think she's just been putting snails in there, but she's not actually been feeding it. So still hot. Right, when I give it a stir up, it is a tiny bit smelly and it's quite wet, so if you come and have a look what's going on when I give it a stir.
Smelly.
Not too bad.
Not at all.
Okay, so that's what's going on the top. We're gonna try to empty it and see what the compost is like I say, after nearly 4 months. Normally I would put some tarpaulin down when I do it at home, but because we're on soil here, it doesn't really matter too much. So we're just going to empty it into buckets, and if we make a bit of mess, the beauty of doing it on soil is you don't really need to worry about that. But here we go. Well, I think anyone who opens a Hotbin for the first time and sees that is going to be quite happy, aren't you? Even the missus is getting excited, and believe you and me guys, that doesn't happen very often anymore.
But it's a nice one. This is a nice one.
What, the compost?
Yeah.
Yeah, go close then.
Look at me. Is that what it comes like?
I'm going to empty this compost straight into some just plastic pots, and we're going to grow some courgette plants straight into there, because I know courgettes and things like that are very hungry, so I think you can also see whether they get on better in this sort of compost compared to normal. So I've got a truckload of pots coming. I don't think I'm going to need them all, but you never know. So if we come close, we can see we've got some worms in there, which, as I always say, that's not a bad thing. So on the sides we are like nice and wet, but not over wet. And in the middle you can see that ashy sort of effect that I always say is quite dry in the middle.
Stop. What's that?
What? So that's obviously survived in the compost. I don't know what it is. If anybody knows, let us know. But doesn't look too pleasant. Where are we going to put it, Mum?
Well, I don't know.
Throw it on the garden. Throw it on the garden for like a bird or eat it or something.
Put it in there, because I don't want to touch it. No, it's pretty ugly, isn't it? Yeah.
What, did it come out of here?
Yeah. I think it was. Where would it come from?
No.
It's just crawling there.
Massive, isn't
well,
it?
wouldn't it?
Yeah. Now, anyone who's subscribed and watches the Hotbin composting YouTube channel, you'll see that it never collapses there. But if you want proper what actually happens with a Hotbin, then that's what happens. It always collapses.
You caught it really well.
Yeah. So I'm not following the core effect because we're taking it all out today.
tell you what's different.
What?
On this one, everything looks ready. Even the top, when it collapsed,
Yeah, but
it
I
looks ready.
haven't been feeding it that often. That's the problem, isn't it?
But it's all composted.
Yeah. So one thing we've noticed with this Mini, everything seems to have composted quite quick, even though that Hotbin, the dial wasn't shut. It was in the green, but it wasn't like 60 degrees. But stuff was still composting quite quickly, and as I'm emptying it all, if I was doing this with the larger Hotbin that I was continuously feeding all the time, you'd have stuff falling down that wasn't composted, so you'd end up with like peelings, weeds, stuff like that. But with this, it seems like we can empty it all in one go, and pretty much everything is pretty much composted. Even if it's not, you could put it in a bag and it would easily compost within a month or so, because it's at that stage already. So that's a real big plus with this Mini.
Do you think it's because it was undercover? No.
Don't think so.
So why is that?
I just think it's because we're not feeding it as often.
Cool.
I don't know, and probably because it's a smaller quantity, you're not putting so much in one go, are you? So it's got time to actually
Digest it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas with the larger one, I'm feeding loads, I'm putting quite a lot in there, so it doesn't always give it time. But because I've not really put loads into this one, it's kind of probably give it a chance to go through it quicker. Now, I'm not a fan of Doctor Who, but this does seem like the TARDIS, because I just keep emptying and emptying, and I thought we were going to have too many pots, but actually we need more pots because just so much stuff is coming in and the thing wasn't even full. Now, I thought we were going to have an ant's nest in there just by like the soil on the side that had built up. It looked like what you'd see like as an ant's nest, but actually there's no ants inside it, so that's a real good thing, and yeah, that's a relief, but no ant's nest. Now I'm getting all the shoes dirty. Should have wore different things, innit? I know they're only for work, but it's still not nice. So we've got 5 quite big buckets out of this today, which is, I mean, if you went into the shop and bought that sort of compost, you'd probably be looking at £12 to, if not more, to fill these up. So definitely value for money with what's gone in there and what's come out in that short space of time. Remember, it's 4 months, just under 4 months, but I haven't been feeding this constantly like you could do. So I think with the results we've seen here is magnificent. I'm just going to see what's underneath here. The beauty with the Mark II is you can get the base plate off quite easily. So quite a few worms under there, and a slug has managed to survive as well. So if you're going to use this compost for seedlings, I'd be a bit wary, because you just never know if you're going to have slug eggs in your compost, so just be aware of that. Not too much sludge, but that is 4 months worth, and there's quite a few worms in there, so I'm just going to scoop that out and we're going to put it into here so the worms can carry on breaking this stuff down as well. And I'm sure there'll be a few birds getting some free meals tonight, which would be good. So, conclusion to, does your Hotbin work better undercover in the winter time? Well, I'm sort of in two minds, because at home the large Hotbin has been working throughout the winter pretty well, and compared to this one, I would say we definitely have been keeping the one outside just as hot at certain times, if not hotter than this one. So I think it is all about the feeding that does keep your hot bin hot. But would I bring it in undercover over the winter? I definitely would. There's so many advantages for me of having it undercover during the winter. You prevent it from being in all that cold weather, so if you do get frosty days, it's definitely easier to recover if your hot bin does go cold, to recover it when it's undercover. You haven't got all the rain going over it, and also when you're feeding it, you're not outside in all the wind, snow, rain, whatever weather. You're undercover, so you can take a bit more time, rather than when it's outside you maybe sort of rush stuff with your paper and that, it's not all blowing around in the wind. So definitely a lot of advantages to having it undercover. And like I say, we put this in here mid-February, and I think if you were to do this from probably like October, November time, by the time you've collected enough to fill up all your pots ready for planting, your seedlings are going to be at a position where they're ready to be planted. So you're kind of going to get a win-win situation. So come sort of spring, like February, March, you can empty your hot bin like I've done here, clean it out and put it back outside, and you've got a whole load of compost ready for planting. So definitely a plus side. Now I hope this video's given you a bit of a laugh. It's been a long process, and we're going to clean this out, and I've got another experiment that I want to do. So don't forget, if you haven't already subscribed, to subscribe. As I keep saying, it's all about creating a community where we can all bounce off each other. So leave comments, not just for me but for everyone. I know people read it and it helps everybody out, but I'm getting too hot in here. It's time for me to clean this out. So until next time, happy composting and enjoy.